Good evening. Welcome to the RL Living Stage. My name is Rebecca Hom, and I'm a storyteller, and so are you. Now, people ask me quite often, how did I get started storytelling? Oh, you must have been in the theater. Nope. Oh, I wasn't the kind of person that liked to be up in front of people. I mean, giving a book report at school, that was agony. No, theater. I was in one play, though. There in Jessup, Iowa, in high school. Now, this was a big production. It was a play, a one-act play called Occurrence at Owl Creek, set during the Civil War, and a serious play. It's about a man who has been caught by the other side of the military. I can't remember if he was Confederate and he had been caught by the Union soldiers, or if he was Union and now was a prisoner of the Confederates. But no matter, whoever it was, they had him on the bridge. They had a rope around his neck, and he was going to face his death there. Now, in this play, the man is having all sorts of memories and flashbacks of his life and what it had been like. And I had a part in one of those flashbacks. So this was my big premiere in theater. I'd never been up there in a play before. And this was in front of the entire community. I mean, when you live in a small little farm town, the school is the center of the town. And whenever there's an event, everyone is there. They pull out the white canvas that covers the hardwood basketball court there in the gymnasium. And then they set up all the rows of folding chairs to hold everyone in the community. So I was really nervous. I mean, everybody I knew, and then a few that I didn't know, because, you don't always know everybody, even when you live in a really small town. But everybody I knew was there, and I was going to be up on stage for my big premiere. I was really nervous. I had my part already, and so we're at the peak of tension at this play. The man is having a very, very intense memory. We believe that the bridge, that he has just been pushed from the bridge, and he's thinking of his family. And in that moment, a flashback and strobe lights flashing. I mean, it was 1972. There were strobe lights even in Jessup, Iowa. In that tense moment was my premiere and my part. I came out onto stage and I said, "Father!" It was a stop action moment in the strobe lights. And so that's my theater experience. And that really didn't do much for bringing me to storytelling, because I was still very, very, very nervous. But through luck, good fortune, and chance, I found a place to learn how to tell stories, and I found a mentor who would teach a few people in a small group how to become a core group of storytellers. But I believe that everybody's got stories. It's not just storytellers who stand up on a stage and think that there's some stuff. I mean, Everybody's got a story. Now, a lot of the stories, some of the best ones, come from, our own personal experiences. Some of the best stories come from our own memories and our own families. Well, I got one of those. Now, when I was 3 years old, I lived out on my family's farm with my mother and my father and my mom and my dad and my 2 sisters. Now, my oldest sister, well, she was 12 years older than me. And my middle sister, well, she's 9 years older than me. And so when I was 3, they were 15. Okay. And they were 12, right. 15 and 12 they were. And I was only 3 years old. So I got to stay home every day with my mom and dad while my 2 sisters had to go to school. Now, staying home with my mom and dad, that was some of the best thing you could ever do. I mean, Mom, she would make dough early in the morning, and then she would roll it out and take a cutter that was round, and it also had a round hole in the center of it. She was making donuts. She had raised donut dough. And she would take that dough and she would plop it. After she'd cut the donuts, she would plop them into that hot oil, and they would just bubble. Fresh, hot donuts. Oh, so soft. Smells so good on the inside and so hot and crispy around on that brown outside, done to perfection. And then, my job, I had a paper bag with cinnamon and sugar in it, and my mom would drop those hot donuts into that bag of cinnamon and sugar, and I shake them up, and then eat them. Now, I'm not sure. We might have done that before my sisters had to get on the bus to go into town to go to school, but as I recall, they were all my donuts. Now, I also spent time out with my dad, taking care of chores, feeding chickens and milking cows. I mean, really, still, we milked cows. And then doing other things out around outside. But the very best memory and the best time was when my grandpa would come out to visit. Grandpa-de Grief. That's my mom's dad. Now, Grandpa-de Grief, he'd come out driving along that gravel road in his old car, and he'd turn up the lane, come driving up, pull up into the yard, and then he'd get out and close his door and come walking up to the house, carrying a little brown paper bag for me. It wasn't the donuts, No, in this bag was always candy. Candy for me. And my sisters were in school. So that was always the thing I looked forward to, was seeing Grandpa-de Grief coming. He'd come driving up the lane, pull up into the yard, close the door, and come walking up to the house carrying that little paper bag for me. Until one day, isn't that how a story always goes? Everything's going along just fine until one day, Grandpa-de Grief, he came driving up the lane just like always. Got out of his car, closed the door, came walking up to the house just like always, carrying that little bag for me. But when he got to the door this time, instead of handing that bag to me like he always did, he handed it to my mom. Well, he had never done that before. That's my candy. What are they doing? And my mom, she took that bag of candy and she went into the bathroom and she put it up on the highest shelf up above the washing machine. Well, now she'd never done that before. And so, being 3 years old, I watched and I waited and I waited and I watched until they weren't watching me. And then I went into the bathroom and I took the little step stool that was sitting in there, a little wooden step stool, and I pushed it over next to the washing machine and I climbed up on top of it, stood up on the washing machine and reached up as high as I could to get that bag, and I grabbed it. I could get it. I could hear something rolling around inside of it. And I thought, it's those little striped, white and red peppermints. I always loved those. Put my hand inside, and I could feel the little round hard balls rolling around there. And I grabbed up a handful. And just as I did, my mom came around the corner and she said, "No, don't." And I said, it was mothballs. And I had eaten a whole handful of them. Now, if you don't know what mothballs are, they are these little round, stinky, nasty, poisonous things that a moth has enough sense not to even come close to them. Now, I had eaten a whole handful. My mom, she grabbed me up and she drove me to the nearest hospital in the next town. And legend has it that when I came home, I told everybody about how I'd had my stomach stumped. My stomach pumped. But there is a happy ending to this story. From that day to this, I have never eaten a mothball since. You're welcome. Now, I just want to make a point that, mothballs can represent a whole lot of things in life. It can be about things that look pretty good, that we think it's something else and it turns out to be something other. But if there's someone who loves you and truly cares about you and comes up to you and says, "Oh, no, don't," well, then take a minute. Smell the mothballs. Because, if I would have even sniffed them once, instead of being a greedy, gobbly 3-year-old kid, if I would have smelled those mothballs at all, I would have known they weren't peppermint candy. So my advice, I guess, is all I'm saying is smell the mothballs. Take a minute. Now, you probably all have those kinds of personal stories in your life. You've got things that you remember as a kid. You're making memories all the time as a kid. Maybe you're visiting here at the Hotel RL and you're going to remember when your mom and dad took you up to that great hotel and sat there next to the window looking out at the lake or something like that. You never know. But life carries us on. And we have wonderful moments in our life where we learn real big lessons. We're never too old to learn another lesson. We roll along and we're not sure that things are going well, and we're so caught up in the hecticness of our everyday life, raising a family, having a job, trying to get things done. That's how it was when I was a young mother. I was in my 30s, had 2 kids, and I was living here in central Washington. Summer day, oh, hot, hot. The forecast said it was going to get up over 100 degrees that day. And there in central Washington, the sun beats down. And the best thing you can figure to do is go find shade and water, like any smart critter would do. And so that's what was on my plan for that day. Over 100-degree weather, only one thing: pack up the kids and head out with all the other mothers and children to Peregrine Lake and enjoy the cool water, the shady trees, the cool grass, and spend the day. But as I was packing up and getting ready to go, I thought about my husband. He was going to be up working in his office all day long. He wasn't going to be able to go out to the lake and have the same kind of fun that we were going to have. So I did something really special that day. I made his lunch. Yeah, I made up this beautiful, beautiful plate. There was a new fresh wheat bread sandwich. Oh, thick slices of bread. Good roast beef slices. Oh, sliced thin, little horseradish. All the trimmings, lettuce, tomatoes. Oh, cut it in diagonal halves the way he likes it. Set it on the plate at an angle. And then I put in some thin green and red pepper slices. Oh, adorned it with some celery. Oh, and leaves from the celery, yeah. Just did that plate up looking so beautiful. And then I double wrapped it in saran wrap so that it would stay nice and fresh. And I found a little vinyl red sticker heart that I could put right there on top of the plate. That way, when Dale came home for lunch, he'd seen that I had gone to so much effort. I didn't usually make his lunch. And he would see that red heart and know that we were thinking of him. Now, the kids and I went on out to the lake, and we spent a wonderful day there. Oh, splashing and laughing, running and chasing, sleeping and snoozing, mama's chatting. And then the sun started getting close to the West Hills, and it was time to pack it up and call it a day, get home for dinner. Now, we drove back to the house, and by the time we got there, my youngest, she was already sound asleep from the car ride. I went in and laid her in bed, and my 3-year-old, I told him, okay, we'll set you up, and got him watching a movie. And then I went out in the kitchen to start fixing some dinner. And what did I see? Debris. There was that lunch plate, sitting on the counter. I looked at it and I thought, he couldn't even clear it off. He couldn't even put it into the sink. And I turned away in frustration, started working at the stove, getting dinner ready. And when I turned back again and picked up that plate to scrape the cherry pits that he had left behind, what did I see? Dale had taken all of those cherry pits from the bright red cherries that I had left on his beautiful plate. He had taken those cherry pits and he had arranged them into a heart. And I had almost thrown it away without even seeing it. I quickly ran and got the little bottle of Elmer's glue and glued all of those hearts back together again. I still have it. But you know, when I look at that little heart now, if I stop and I think about it, I realize that some things just depend on how you're looking at them. I mean, one man's trash can be another man's treasure. Dale hadn't left me a mess. He had left me a message. And so, by seeing it just another way, I had gotten his message. Thank you, thank you. I think I'll share a ballad song and story with you. This is inspired from a song, an Irish song, that I bet almost everybody knows. It's about Sweet Molly. You know, Molly Malone. In Dublin fair city where girls are so pretty. Yeah, that good time girl, Molly Malone. They even have a statue of Molly, a bronze statue there near a pub by Trinity University, Trinity College. Yes, there she stands, Molly, pushing her cart, bronze statue. But the thing is, where most of the statue is covered in a mild, warm patina, Molly's bosoms are rubbed shiny bright because all the college guys give her a rub for good luck before their finals. Yeah, we know her as a good time girl. We know her as lifting a pint at the pub. We know her as the trollop with the scallops. But I think maybe things were a little different than that for Molly. And this is a story that came to my mind when I listened to the song a little closer. I was a young girl, and I'd been apprenticed to a milliner there in the middle of Dublin town. Oh, it was wonderful. I had left my family's little farm, and I'd found a way to get into the city. And I worked in a nice shop. I worked with fine women that could afford to come in and buy fancy hats. And I got to work, sat right next to the window there. Oh, it was good luck for me, it was. But as I sat there by the window every day, I would see Molly come pushing by and with her cart full of scallops and mussels. And I noticed that everyone who passed Molly came away with a smile. I noticed that she always had a good word for everybody there on the street. They said that Molly Malone, she makes the day brighter just by giving you a smile. It was Sweet Molly. Oh, bright and fair, filled with grace. In Dublin's fair city, where the girls are so pretty, it was there that I first met sweet Molly Malone. She was a fishmonger, sure was no wonder, for so were her mother and her father before. They each wheeled a barrow through streets broad and narrow, calling cockles, mussels, alive, alive, oh. Alive, alive, oh, oh, alive, alive, oh, oh, calling cockles, mussels, alive, alive, oh. It wasn't an easy life for Molly. She was a fishmonger, and so were her mother and father before. But now her mother and father were gone, and Molly was coming into her full beauty of womanhood. But Molly had to work. There was no one taking care of Molly. No, she'd get up every morning and she would go down there to the docks to find the best catch, the freshest catch, and the best price. And the men there on the docks, they would make suggestions with Molly of how she might get the freshest catch and the best price. And Molly, she was known to use her assets. But who can blame a girl? Who can blame a girl for wanting to keep food on her table and a roof over her head? Who can blame a girl that if you've worked hard all day long and you're cold and tired and your hands ache and your legs feel like they will break from the burden? Who can blame a girl when she wants to just go to the pub where there is some light and laughter? Who can blame a girl for wanting some warmth in a cold bed? Who can blame a girl? Well, you know, there were those who could blame her. And some of them came into the milliner's shop where I was working. Oh, I'd be sewing their hats. I'd be making them beautiful as best I could. Those women. And they would talk about Molly. They'd see her pass by the window and they'd say, there's that trollop, that Molly Malone. You know, she's going to come up to a bad end. Oh, yes, she will come to a bad end, it's sure of it. But you know, it will be of her own doing. Oh, it will be of her own doing, yes, of course, because it will be her own and none of ours. That was how they spoke of Molly. That was how they saw her. She died of the fever. There was no one to save her. And that was the end of sweet Molly Malone. But still her ghost wheels her barrow through streets broad and narrow, calling kakus, mussels, alive, alive, oh, alive, alive, oh, alive, alive, oh, she calls kakus, mussels, alive, alive, oh. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to tell you the last story for tonight. You've been great to listen for so long. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed sharing stories with you. Stories. I believe that there are so many kinds of stories in the world. There are personal stories, like I've shared with you. There are legends, ballads, myths. There are scary stories. I mean, how many of you've been around at campfires when that's what we seem to like to tell? The drag thump, there that's in the woods behind you. Or the famous Sasquatch stories that maybe something's behind the trees coming at you. Yeah. Campfires, fire in general, makes for good stories. There are so many reasons that we share our stories and tell different stories. We tell to comfort each other. A story of loss overcome and loss shared can ease other people's burdens. We share stories for laughter and just to lighten the load of the daily work. We share stories to preserve history, whether it's our family history, our country's history, or cultural history. There are so many ways to tell stories and so many stories to behold. And some people wonder, how did stories even get here in the first place? Well, I'll tell you a story. Anansi the spider, Anansi from Liberian stories. Anansi, he always liked to stir things up. Anansi, he was a trickster, kind of like coyote, kind of like raven, kind of like Brer Rabbit. All those tricksters, always making trouble, tossing things around, and taking advantage of people whenever they can. So Anansi heard that Naomi, the sky god, had a basket full of stories. Oh, and that Naomi kept them up there in the sky and kept them for himself. Anansi thought, I would like to have those stories. I think I would be very good at keeping those stories. I should have them. They should be mine. And Anansi, who is always bold, went up there, up to Naomi, and he said, I want the basket of stories. I want them for me. Naomi looked at Anansi and said, Anansi, you want the basket of stories. If you want the basket of stories, you will have to work for them. There are 3 things that you will have to do for me. You must capture Mumburo, the hornet, Asizi, the leopard, and Onini, the python. If you can do this and bring them to me, Then I will give you the basket of stories. Oh, no problem, said Anansi. I can do this thing. I will be back. And so Anansi, he went there. And immediately he knew. First thing, he would get Mumburo. He knew exactly how he would trick them. All right. And so Anansi, he took the calabash, a big gourd. It was hollowed out. Yes, he took it. There was a hole there. And he took some water and a palm frond. And he went there near Hornet's nest. And they were buzzing all about. Yes. And Anansi started sprinkling the water there at Hornet's. He said, oh, it's raining, quick. You come in here, inside the calabash, it's dry, this will be good. Yes, get out of the rain. And the Hornets, they went into the calabash, and Anansi, he put the cork in, sealed it shut. And then he went up to Naomi and said, Mumburo, that's one. Now, Anansi went back down. Oh, Nini, Python. How will he do that? He could not think of it. Anansi could not think of a way to get Python. I mean, he thought, and he thought, and he thought through the whole day, but nothing came to his thoughts. And so that evening he went home and he said to his wife, I need to capture Onini, but I don't know how to do it. And his wife said, oh, that's very simple. And she told him a plan. Next morning, Anansi, he went walking out carrying a long bamboo pole. And as he walked along, he said, she says he is. I say he isn't. She says he is. I say he isn't. And Anansi, he walked and walked to the place where he knew leopard liked to trail through the jungle. Oh, I'm sorry. Not leopard. Python. He went to the place where he knew python liked to move from tree to tree, where python liked to dangle down. He went there. Walking along. She says he is. I say he isn't. She says he is. I say he isn't. She says he is. I say he isn't. And there he was, under the tree where Python dangled. Python said, what does she say? And what are you saying? Anansi said, Python, you were just who I was talking about. Python, my wife and I, we are discussing. And my wife says that you are longer than this pole. And I say, oh, no, he isn't. Python looked down. Of course I'm longer than that pole. And he crawled down the tree and laid there along the pole, stretching out far. Anansi said, well, you know, if you stretch your head down this way, yes, a little further, and then try and stretch your tail out, and then I could really see if you are longer than the pole, because right now I can't see. Python stretched. But Anansi said, oh, I still can't tell. Python, here, I will tie you here at your neck. Okay, so that will keep you solid. at this end. Okay, now stretch out far. Oh, yes, I'll tie you down here on your tail. Well, my python, you are longer than the pole. And then Nancy picked up Python around that pole and up to Naomi. And Nancy said, that's two. And then Nancy went down to capture Osibo. Now, Osibo would be the toughest one because sharp claws, sharp teeth, and a terrible temper. But like all cats, this leopard also liked to play. And Nancy knew that was the way to trick him. So Anansi came walking along there through the jungle and saying, bindy, bindy, bindy game, bindy, bindy, bindy game. And Osibo, the leopard, heard this and thought, a game? A game? What's going on over there? I want to play. You've seen how cats are, right? Anything they hear. A game? Oh, what's that? I'll go play. Bindy, bindy, bindy game. Bindy, bindy, bindy game. And Nancy sang, knowing that leopard was coming. Osibo was near. Bindy, bindy, bindy game. Bindy, bindy, bindy game. Osibo came up and said, what is this bindy game that you're talking about? I think I'd like to play. I'd like to play. And Nancy said, I'll show you. I can teach you bindy game. Okay, first, I'll show you first, all right? So first you put these paws together, put these legs together, yes. And then, see? Bindy. Okay, now put your back one. Yeah, put those together, those legs together. Okay, yeah. Bindy game. Bindy game. Anansi had Osibo all tied up. And he took him up to Naomi. That's 3. Now, basket of stories. Yes. For me. I've done this. I've done all of this. Done it all myself. I've done this. Now, the stories are mine. Naomi looked at Anansi and said, Anansi, I want you to think about this. Take a moment. Think. The stories are very, very, very important. And so, if you are to take them, you are to take care of them, and you are to share them. If they come down there, they must be shared with everyone. And then Nancy. And Nancy did not take a moment to think, and he said, yes, give me the stories. Yes, okay, yes. Stories, me, right, give, now. And Naomi gave Anansi the basket of stories. And Anansi started climbing back down. But while he was climbing, that's when he started to think. And he started to think about this big basket of stories and what Naomi had said, and that the stories were important, and that now he needed to share them with everyone. Well, thought Naomi, or thought Anansi. Why? Why should I share all the stories? I'm the one who captured the hornets, the python, and the leopard. Why shouldn't I just keep all the stories for myself? Because then I'll have them and I'll be the most powerful. He was thinking, but not thinking the best things, and thinking, and not watching where he was climbing. And so, as he was thinking and climbing, he missed a step, and Anansi fell, all the way down to the ground. And the basket of stories hit the ground and spread out all over the world, carried away like dandelion fluff. And so it is that Anansi is the one who brought stories to all the world. And now they float around out there in the air. And if you want one, you can reach up and grab it for yourself. Thanks to Anansi, the spider. My name is Rebecca Hom, and I'm a storyteller. And so are you.